And we're back with our political panel. Peggy Noonan is a columnist for the Wall Street Journal and a CBS News contributor. Jamelle Bouie is chief political correspondent for Slate Magazine and a CBS News political analyst. Susan Page is USA Today's Washington bureau chief. And Ed O'Keefe covers politics for the Washington Post. Welcome to all of you. Susan, I want to start with you. The latest in Iowa on the Republican side, very tough, very tight between Cruz and Trump. How does it go from here?
Well, Cruz has a narrow lead. It looks more narrow in a poll out today, a mayor's poll out this morning. But you know what Cruz has? He has an organization there and in other states. And we don't know if Trump has the kind of organization that historically has worked in bringing people out to go to those caucuses on a cold winter's night. This is a big advantage to Ted Cruz, whatever this poll shows.
And the Trump advantage might be that he brings out all kinds of people, yes, but do they actually do the hard
people?
Work?
That's right, and that's proved to be hard in the past. Sometimes it's worked. It worked for Barack Obama. He turned out a lot of new voters in the Democratic caucuses in 2008, but it's tough.
There's a lot of talk, Ed, about third place in Iowa. Why might that be important?
Because it's likely to be one of those establishment or sort of middle-of-the-road Republicans, and that person hopes to take that win or that third place showing in Iowa and vault into a better position in New Hampshire, where you have now, according to this poll this morning, 44% of New Hampshire Republicans are choosing between 5 of these establishment guys: Rubio, Christie, Kasich, Bush. Sorry, 4 of them. And it's just so many you can lose count. But you know, and in New Hampshire, the dynamic is so much more tighter because you have these 3 governors, especially Jeb Bush, Chris Christie, John Kasich, sort of in a circular firing squad inside the larger circular firing squad, because really only one of them is going to be able to emerge from New Hampshire and sort of make the point to the rest of the country, let me continue on.
Yeah, I want to get to that punching match, because it was a new, it's getting worse this week. Jamelle, the Cruz-Trump friendship, whatever it was, joint operations, has gone away. They are now, Donald Trump brought up this issue of Ted Cruz and whether he's eligible to be president. Cruz tried at first not to. What do you make of where this is going?
I think this is Trump kind of going back to his greatest hits of attacks on politicians he does not like, or at least does not trust. He sort of brought up the birther question with Barack Obama back in 2011. I think he's trying that again. The difference here is I don't actually think Cruz needs to do much to respond, because I'm not sure how much actual Republican voters are taking this that seriously. I think Cruz is well liked enough among especially conservative Republican voters and evangelicals that all he has to say is, come on guys, this is nonsense, and it's fine. This is not a case, as with Obama, where he is distrusted. There, these accusations, the idea that he is somehow not eligible, there that kind of coalesces with a bunch of other distrust and anger to really go further.
Peggy, I want to ask you about the competition that's going on in the Republican ranks right now. You have Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, and then you have these establishment characters. I want to put something up that Reince Priebus, who's the chairman of the Republican Party, said about Donald Trump. And he said, I'm not one of those people that think Donald Trump can't win a general election. I actually think there's a huge crossover appeal there to people that are disengaged politically. This was significant because Reince Priebus is kind of saying, well, it might be okay if he's the nominee.
Yeah.
Where do you, but then you've got then these quote unquote establishment Republicans saying Donald Trump will be the destruction of the party. How does this get sorted out?
We're going to see it sorted out over the next very few weeks and months. If Trump does well in Iowa, Cruz wins, but maybe Trump exceeds expectations, or even possibly Trump wins. If Trump wins in New Hampshire, if Trump starts to look like, wow, this could really happen, the establishment of the party is going to be forced either to come to terms or to make sounds about bolting. And that, of course, would be interesting. I mean, how would people bolt? Where would they do it? What would they do about Trump? My sense of Republicans on the ground is that more and more of them are at least getting used to the idea of the serious possibility of Trump. So that's some progress for him.
And Jamelle, this is not just backing a person that they would, there's something going on behind Trump. The New York Times has this story today in which they quote someone who says, the Republican Party has never done anything for a working man like me, even though we voted Republican for years. Mr. Trump, this is somebody who was at one of Trump's rallies. This election is the first in my life where we can change what it means to be a Republican.
Right. It's interesting. I think there's a way in which both Priebus and establishment Republicans who say Trump will destroy the party, they are both right. Priebus in the sense that I think Trump is appealing to these disaffected white workers who believe the Republican Party has not really spoken to their economic issues. And Trump is kind of showing a path to how you get those people to the polls, some combination of, economic populism and nativism, frankly. On the other, so if that's the case, and if Trump becomes the nominee, then the kind of traditional Republicanism that you see from Bush and Christie and Kasich, that means it's dying. That means that its viability is limited as a political movement.
I don't understand how, if Trump plays by the rules, gets nominated by winning primaries, how Reince Priebus or any other establishment Republican says he's not the legitimate Republican nominee. But I do think what could happen is something that involves one of the guests that you've had on your show, John, and that is Paul Ryan. And I wonder if what you might see happening is the establishment Republicans say, yes, Trump's our nominee. Let's talk about Paul Ryan. Let's make him the face of the GOP. Let's talk about what Congress is going to do. You remember what happened in 1996 when the establishment Republicans decided that Bob Dole was going to lose, and Newt Gingrich started making deals with a Democratic president, Bill Clinton, and it was harmful for Dole, but they had decided he was going to lose that election. They tried to go in a different direction to save the party, and I just wonder if we might see that happen this time.
And either way, it's smart of him to be talking about poverty, this summit he was holding in South Carolina yesterday, because I think it does potentially remind the rest of the party that what Trump is doing here is appealing to these lower income Americans. 15% of the country is in poverty right now. It would be smart for the Republican Party to at least talk about it. The challenge will be, how do you counter the inevitable Democratic attacks that will come when they say they're trying to undo the food stamp program and all these other things that happens every time they talk about that. But I think you're right, that by having Washington-based Republicans, Congress essentially, working on these things, either they can find a way to score some points or at least be working on some policy decisions while Trump's running around the country.
What's so interesting, though, about this year is that Mrs. Clinton, on the Democratic side, Mrs. Clinton is the establishment. The leader on the Republican side is a living rebuke to the establishment. The establishment, using this sloppily and in a broad way, is going to have to figure out what to do about this. Do we just roll with this? Suppose Trump brings in a lot of independents and Democrats in New Hampshire, maybe later in Virginia. Then the Republican Party is in the position of happily letting new people in, except they don't like the guy they are coming in for. Do you know what I mean? It's a complicated and strange year.
One more complexity. Charles Koch is quoted this week as saying, the things I'm passionate about and I think this country urgently needs aren't being addressed. He then went on to criticize Donald Trump's plan for banning Muslims and Ted Cruz's plan for attacking ISIS, Jamel. So that's another part of the establishment with a big checkbook.
I mean, I think that quote gets to sort of the core dilemma here, not in terms of sort of partisanship, but like the ideological factions in the Republican Party. The kind of Reagan-esque conservatism that has been ascendant or dominant in the party since Reagan is being directly challenged by Trump. And a viable electoral coalition, if Trump can assemble it, I'm not sure if by going to Paul Ryan in Washington, that's somehow a fix, because you have, it's not just that they're both Republicans, you have Paul Ryan representing a fundamentally different kind of conservatism that Trump would be representing.
And yet some of the independents and Democrats Trump seems to be drawing in a little bit have a Reagan Democrat feel to them. Do you know what I mean? They're Catholic, working class. This is a big jumble. I think this year we found our old categories don't quite encompass the year we're in.
Let's talk about the Democrats quickly. Susan, tightening. What do you think for Hillary Clinton? Is she more worried about new email revelations or that Bernie Sanders is getting close in Iowa?
I think she's more worried about Bernie Sanders, because emails don't hurt her that much with Democratic primary voters. But boy, Bernie Sanders, who would have thought when Bernie Sanders announced his campaign that we would be 3 weeks out from Iowa and it would be a margin of error race in Iowa and in New Hampshire. And Hillary Clinton has a 20-point lead nationwide, but man, the momentum can really shift. We've seen that before. If Bernie Sanders managed to win Iowa and then New Hampshire, then Hillary Clinton goes south. They think she's in a good position in the South, thanks in part to her support among African-American voters. But this is the kind of thing that could reinforce some of the concerns some Democrats have about Hillary Clinton's appeal. This is going to be fun, too.
And I think what's most interesting is that she's still refuses to take on Trump. If she has been paying attention to the Republican race at all in the last few months, she should know that the sooner you respond, the better. Jeb Bush is probably the best example of that. He let it wallow for too long over the summer, and we know where he is now. I just think that if these attacks continue on Bill Clinton's character and whether or not she was associated with it or allowed it to fester, that actually could become a real vulnerability for her, and that many Democratic voters down the line, if it continues, will see that as a potential weakness.
I agree.
But Peggy, when you
I
take
just agree. Yeah. Well, and that settles it.
Yeah, right, exactly. We'll just end the show early. You've solved it all. But if you're going to, taking on Donald Trump means that these questions of the past are going to be in the news cycle every 10 seconds. He knows how to fight, toughen at a street level. Is it really wise for her to take him on these questions?
I think, first of all, I'm surprised that she was surprised that he took her on. I mean, she went at him. She said, "You're a sexist." He said, "I'm a sexist. Look what you've done to women." He's famous for hitting you right. Yes. Well, also he said "you" too in enabling and being part of his dramas. He's famous, Donald Trump, for giving you a hard right if you hit him. So I was surprised. She was surprised to get hit. Look, you do have to answer him sternly and definitively. One of the things we'll find out in the coming week is whether Ted Cruz can really put to bed this rather mischievous issue that has come up about whether or not he's a U.S. citizen, which Trump has brought forward because Cruz is a threat to him.
Jamel, Hillary Clinton has a new ad where she shows the Republicans and then says who's the one candidate who can stop them. So she's running on electability. Is that her route to the nomination, or this attack on gun control that she's made on Sanders?
I think sort of a combination of the two is going to be best positioned to at least diminish Sanders in a state like Iowa, which is more. The Iowa Democrats are probably more liberal than Democrats nationally, but they are still very concerned with electability. On the whole, though, I think this very strong Bernie challenge, this surprisingly strong Bernie challenge, is the best thing that could happen for the Democratic Party. I think part of Clinton's problem is the perception that this was going to be a coronation. And we can already see these sort of like rifts between Bernie supporters and the DNC and establishment Democrats. But if Bernie wins Iowa, if Bernie wins New Hampshire, and then we have this drawn-out tough race for the nomination, and if Clinton wins, that in itself conveys legitimacy, right? That I fought for this.
It's the best thing that can happen to her if she wins.
If she wins.
All right, we're going to have to end it there. Thanks to all of you. We'll be right back with more of our interview with Speaker Paul Ryan on the issue of poverty. And we're back with more of our interview with House Speaker Paul Ryan, who hosted a conversation about poverty with Republican presidential candidates yesterday. Let me ask you a philosophical question. Hubert Humphrey, a Democrat, of course, used to say, the strength of the American economy is best judged by the weakness of any section or any person or any part. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think there's something to that. I'm not a big Hubert Humphrey fan, but I do. I think, look, let me give you another Democrat, Jack Kennedy. A rising tide lifts all boats. I think that's true. But with poverty, we are finding deep and persistent chronic poverty. We're over 50 years in the war on poverty. We've had 80 programs created since then at the federal level, spending trillions of dollars, yet we basically have a stalemate on our hands. We have a safety net that tries to catch people from falling into poverty, but we don't have one that helps get people out of poverty. We're actually treating the symptoms of poverty and perpetuating poverty. So we need to break that cycle, and we need to go at the root causes of poverty and measure success not based on input and efforts and money and programs, but on outcomes and results. Are we getting people out of poverty?
Is that what you mean by reintegrating the poor? That was something you said today.
Look, not to get into statistics, but our labor force participation rates are pretty awful. We haven't seen these since like the Carter years. What that means is able-bodied adults aren't working or aren't looking for work. They're marginalized. They're on the sidelines. We've got to get them back into the economy for two reasons. They share their talents with us, the rest of society, so we benefit from them sharing their talents, and they get their lives back together. That kind of injection of human creativity, of work, of energy, that helps everybody. That helps the economy. That lowers the crime rate. That lowers the drug rate. That helps get economy and the society going. And yeah, that's what we should be pushing for.
You want folks to work, more work requirements for benefits. What progressives will say is, a lot of the poor have jobs, and so what's required is things to help them keep the jobs. So fair work schedule, paid sick leave, medical, family and medical leave to kind of keep them in the jobs so that they can keep those jobs
I don't
going?
want to keep people in dead-end jobs. I don't want to keep people in jobs that keep them in poverty. I want people to be able to get the skills they need to get better jobs. I want people to have the ability to get on the escalator of upward mobility, which is slowing down in America. So we got to get them the skills they need. And that's not just a job. That might be many different kinds of problems that people are experiencing. But if we think all the wisdom's in Washington, you know, just if we're telling our fellow citizens, pay your taxes, government's going to fix poverty, Washington's got a bureaucracy that will take care of this, that's not going to work. That's what we've been doing for 50 years. But if we say each and every one of us in America needs to get involved so that we can, in our communities, help a person, and if we can remove those barriers that are making it harder for people to rise and get an economic growth that is growing the economy everywhere, then we can reignite the enthusiasm for the American idea, the American dream, reconnect people to it. Instead of treating the symptoms of poverty so people can tolerate it more, let's get them out of poverty. And so I think what the left ends up doing is they speak to people as if they're stuck in their current station in life, and government's here to help them cope with it. We should reject that. We want to help people get out of the fix they're in and get on to a better life so that they can meet their potential and flourish. There will be differences in people's lives, but that's okay. That's what a free society has.
Let me ask you about the phrase takers. You once referred to those who receive benefits as takers, and you later apologized.
Yeah, I was wrong.
And it's interesting you say, because in that case you seem to be saying, be careful about the words you use. In the presidential campaign right now, that would be called political correctness.
Well, look, I think I was wrong. I mean, when you do something that is wrong, you should call it to it. People who go on government assistance, people who are on government benefits, sure, some people are going to exploit the system. Some people are choosing to just live on the dole and not work because they prefer that. That's a small percentage of it. Most people don't want to be poor. Most people don't want to be dependent. And if we speak as if everybody is in this category, that's wrong. And so that's what I did, and I was wrong to do that. And so that's why I think we need to respect people for the ambitions and the goals and the dreams that they actually have, and then help facilitate their access to it. So, yeah, I think political correctness has gone way overboard, and that's the new thing in the campaign, which I think is great. But let's just be accurate. Let's be right, and let's not have populism that's unattached from our principles.
And we'll be right back. That's it for us today. Thanks for watching. Until next week, for Face the Nation, I'm John Dickerson.